Twitter versus Meta. Let's talk about it. So, on July 5th, Elon Musk and the Twitter team sent a letter to Mark Zuckerberg and the Meta team, basically saying they were going to sue them for a bunch of things. And this was following the launch of Meta's new app, Threads. And yes, on the face of it, there are some similarities, and Threads does resemble Twitter in some ways based on the user interface, some of the functionalities, etc. But they are different. Also, just to note, Threads is actually built off Instagram's code base, so they are connected, and that's not something that Twitter has in any way, shape, or form. But just to get into the letter, and before I even touch on whether I think that letter was a good idea or not, I just want to read some key elements of the letter so that we can discuss some of the legal implications around it. Okay, so it reads, this is towards the bottom, it says, Twitter intends to strictly enforce its intellectual property rights and demands that Meta take immediate steps to stop using any Twitter trade secrets, now that's important and we'll get to that, or other highly confidential information. Twitter reserves all rights, including but not limited to the right to seek both civil remedies and injunctive relief without further notice to prevent any further retention, disclosure, or use of its intellectual property by Meta. It then goes on to say, further, Meta is expressly prohibited from engaging in any crawling or scraping of Twitter's followers or following data. So we'll get to the whole data scraping thing as well. But just to go into some definitions, so trade secrets, that's one of the key things here. And a trade secret by definition is basically valuable information within a company that basically gives it a competitive advantage against its competitors. And essentially, it has to be a secret. So think things like recipes, think KFC, or formulas. It can be a combination of things. It can be algorithms, codes. There's a bunch of things, prototypes. But the key thing is the company has to make sure it's identified that thing as a trade secret. So it can't just be like knowledge of things and the way the company runs. That's not enough. It has to be identified as a trade secret. But one thing is, you can't register a trade secrets with, say, the US Trade Secrets Office. That's not a thing. It's not like trademarks or copyright where you can register it with the US Patent and Trademark Office, right? What you need to do instead is just identify like, yo, this is a trade secret. You're not supposed to tell anyone, so don't tell anyone, and also have the right measures in place. So things like employee contracts, non-disclosure agreements, things like that, confidentiality agreements, just to make sure as a company who is trying to protect a trade secret, the courts are going to look at whether you did what you had to do to protect that trade secret. You need to have taken all the reasonable steps and measures to protect that trade secret. So this is where, looking at this case already. Now, I am no coder. I don't know this stuff really, but just on the face of it, from my perspective, I'm wondering what trade secrets that Twitter is alleging that they have that Meta has misappropriated, or the ex-employees at Twitter have passed on to Meta in the forming of the Threads app, because it's like Twitter has forgotten that Meta is already this big giant in the social media place. They are basically implying that Meta doesn't have the resources or the funds or the, like brain power to formulate another app that does resemble Twitter without taking Twitter's trade secrets and then using that to replicate their own app, which is Threads, right? Sorry, I'm back. So it seems to be the case that Twitter is failing to recognize or is forgetting the fact that Meta already runs large social media platforms and they've been doing this. And so it's like they are failing to recognize that Meta has the competency and knowledge and skills and resources to recreate another app, even if it does resemble Twitter's app. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have infringed or misappropriated any trade secrets. Now, the thing about that is with misappropriation, right now in this letter, Twitter is going directly after Meta. And this is where like data scraping comes in. They're basically saying that Meta has gone in and gone through all their following and their data and taken things to recreate this app that is now Threads, right? But at the same time, they're failing to address the fact, and I was so dumbfounded when I realized this, right? there's this platform called GitHub. It's for like coding and algorithms. I had to use it once for a cyber law assignment. Not the easiest for me, right? But Twitter actually has an open source code that has been posted on GitHub, and I'll put the link in the description for anyone who's interested in actually looking at it. But it literally says Twitter's algorithm. So things like that, it makes me wonder, with Twitter's infrastructure, how hard is it to replicate, not even replicate, but to build something from scratch without having the need for Twitter's trade secrets? And it again makes me wonder what trade secrets could be related to something like Twitter's infrastructure, because clearly somebody like Meta has the knowledge and the ability to create something without having to steal it from Twitter. So that's where this letter that went out, I feel like it did the opposite of what Elon wanted or Twitter wanted, in the fact that it's just given more coverage to Threads. It has given more publicity to it. The talk is up more than ever. Maybe it wouldn't have been as talked about, I don't know, but definitely a lot of the conversation in the last couple of days, this conversation I'm having right now, is related to the fact that Elon's decided to take Mark to court because of the infringement of supposed trade secrets. And so again, the bar to prove trade secrets or the infringement of trade secrets is extremely high. It's extremely difficult to prove, and that burden or the onus is on Twitter as a company to prove that, one, a trade secret existed, and two, that trade secret was misappropriated, so either by their ex-employees or by Meta in some way, which would have to mean that Meta did something dodgy. So just looking at this as a whole, I personally don't think this is going to end up going all the way to court, because again, Twitter has a really high burden of proving the trade secrets existed and that those trade secrets were misappropriated. And I don't know how they're going to do that. Obviously, if it really exists and it's actually a secret, then I shouldn't know about it because it's a secret. But based on the things that are out there, there's also a video or a picture on Twitter that's been circulating of Elon in like the headquarters, and like there's a board and he's like, yeah, I'm at the headquarters, and on the board there's like information relating to things about how Twitter or the platform is run. So just things like that. I don't think he has covered himself very well in building a case to say that his trade secrets have been misappropriated or his intellectual property. And that's what he says in the letter. If this was to go to court today, it would very much most likely be thrown out, because you need to have a specific case. You need to go to court with the facts and the evidence to back those facts. From what I'm seeing so far, from what we're seeing, Elon doesn't have that. So I'm curious to know how this is going to go, and I would love to know your thoughts on it as well. So please let me know in the description box. I will keep following the case, and I just thought it was only right that I speak on it briefly. So thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.